Hey friend, welcome back, or if you're new, welcome. This video is going to be a little bit different today. It's more of a blog. I haven't done one of these before, but this was the perfect fit, I guess, for what I wanted to share with you today. I'm Jeff. I'm an artist, illustrator, and maker. I work on a whole bunch of different projects for clients. I do public art, I do murals, I do workshops, I do illustrations, I do a lot of collaborative projects, and I work a lot with cardboard to make 2D and 3D artworks. What I wanted to share with you today is I went on a holiday. I went on my first holiday in probably like 8 years. I went overseas to America with my boyfriend. We spent 2 weeks over there. So whilst it was a holiday to like relax and recharge, I also took my camera and I wanted to try and see how much inspiration I could get from being over there. And I didn't necessarily know what I was going to be inspired by, but I knew that something would come up. So I'm just going to take you through now my holiday, what I did. I went to the Yosemite National Park, I did Big Sur, I did Monterey, I did an aquarium, I did LA. So it's some nice, delicious footage, if I do say so myself. And yeah, at the very end, I'm going to let you know where I'm going to be taking this inspiration and what artworks I'm going to be making with it. Yeah, so let's get into it. We made it.
Here we are. Reminds me of Newey.
So the first part of our trip was in LA. So we were staying with my boyfriend's brother in LA, which was great. Because he was able to sort of show us around and take us to different places and give us really good recommendations. But the bulk of what our holiday was going to be about was doing hikes in Yosemite. So we wanted to do some of the Griffith Observatory hikes up to the Hollywood sign as a bit of like an entry point. So when we were there, we did 2 hikes, one to get to behind the Hollywood sign, one to get underneath. Actually, we did 3, I guess, in theory. We did one, which was like a big one where you walk and you see the sign from the distance. And then we did another hike where you could go behind the sign and then in front of the sign.
Good luck.
See you on the other side of 10Ks. So I really loved on this hike the difference in the terrain, and just it's so different to Australia. It feels very bush, but a different type of bush, I guess. So on the hikes, there was definitely a world building element to it. I kind of saw the hikes and the path up to the Hollywood sign as almost like a world that I was stepping into, and I could see sort of like an imaginary version of the hike itself. I took lots of photos of the plants and the flowers and the general vegetation, because I wanted to be able to go back and draw it or get inspiration from it for other new versions of like nature that I could draw in my illustrations. When we were at the top of the hill looking at the Hollywood sign, at the observatory, I really like the contrast between the nature and then like the patterns and the structure of the architecture itself, and playing off sort of like nature and man-made elements. And I'm definitely wanting to try and do some drawings based around making worlds where that is happening, architectural fun structures with like nature in around it. Also, the paths gave me this idea of maybe trying to do more like mazes and like map kind of drawings. Lots of like bridges and like paths going over hills or like sweeping around corners. The perspective part of it as well made it quite interesting, and I want to kind of play with that in my illustrations. Once I started to take photos of all the plants, I started to think about this idea of maybe doing an illustrated catalog of sort of all the design elements that I wanted to draw, and then using those as a catalog to then make a world. So I could do, like, for instance, in LA, make a catalog of all the different flowers and plants and sort of design elements from LA, and then use that to then make an illustration that's like some kind of like world building thing. I also thought I could do some patterns, so use those cataloged items to create a pattern, like an LA pattern, and sort of I very much feel like I could get overwhelmed by the idea of like what I could make. So this way of sort of narrowing down all my inspiration into like a catalog of, say, like 40 different design elements, then limits it and then allows me to just pull from that. Looking back on the photos, I also loved the idea of doing portraits where I kind of look at the portraits as being like a photograph or a snapshot from the holiday. So taking a photo of like us smiling with the Hollywood sign in the background and doing my own version of that as like a tableau or a snapshot illustration, I think would be really fun. I really liked the idea that the Hollywood sign was almost like the end game or like the prize at the end of like some kind of journey. So playing on that as like gamifying some kind of landscapes and like theme park kind of world building illustrations. How I would draw palm trees. Obviously the palm trees were such a big visual image that you kind of like, they're everywhere all over LA, and it's such a big like signifier of LA. And B, the idea of like, how would I draw a palm tree in my style could be interesting. And also the houses just in general. We walked down a lot of the different streets and I just took photos of sort of like houses that were kind of interesting, and that could be a really good starting point for that original idea I had of structural pieces and like architecture in with like natural world stuff too. So the few days that we were in LA, it was like a really good starting point of trying to get my head around what I wanted to take photos of and take videos of.
Hey.
Next, we went to Santa Monica for the day, and we went to the pier, and it felt very much like a theme park. All the signage and the fonts and the colors and obviously the rides was just like theme park world for me. And I really loved these really fun mascot kind of characters that were like fries walking or like churros walking. And I thought that could be a really fun way, like inspiration for some like character design maybe. The pier itself reminded me of almost like an island in its own, out on its own in the middle of water. And then it got me thinking that maybe I could do some kind of artwork where there's like an LA portion of a drawing that's like a map, and then there's like a path that goes to like the Santa Monica part, and then maybe to like all the different places that I go. It could be this big world that I build. And I think just in general, the colors from the pier and the color combinations was really quite inspiring. And I'm not entirely sure how it could all piece together, but it will definitely be different to all the other places we went because it's such like bright colors. Like if I did a Santa Monica pattern, I think it would look completely different to LA and then Yosemite as well.
We're driving!
We're driving! How is it?
It feels pretty good.
Yep.
Odd at the start.
These turns are so hard with like I'm trying to stay close to the center of the road.
Yeah.
After we finished in LA, we did a drive to the Yosemite National Park. And the main part of the drive that I found inspiring or memorable was the fact that there was so many windy roads on like the sides of cliffs and hills. it's something that's very different to the way that the Australian roads are. Even like if you go coastal, it doesn't feel the same. And I really was thinking about I think it's called topographical maps, where you're sort of like over the top. And even looking at the car sat nav, with the roads were so windy, and it just made me think of, again, going back to this map idea, maybe there's some inspiration I can take from sort of like the winding roads and sort of cutting around mountains and hills and different landscapes could be something worth exploring. So the drive was to get us to Yosemite. We were going to the Yosemite National Park for a few days, and we were so freaking excited. We were going to do like heaps of walks. We were staying in a place that was about an hour away, and we had our own little cabin, and it had little bear sculptures out the front, and it was in the middle of kind of nowhere, which was really lovely. And I definitely want to do some kind of an illustration or artwork based around the house or the cabin and these like bare little details that were featured all through the house. I really loved the handle, like the towel holder in the bathroom that had a bear on it holding the little ring for the towel, which was really cute. So I think there's maybe like a tableau illustration of us there that I want to do.
Did you find something?
It's a bear trap.
Yeah. Honey pot.
Then it gets to Yosemite. So we did 2 walks, a day to chill for our legs, where we went to a local creek and a few local places. And then we went to Hetch Hetchy as well. And broadly, it was like amazing. It was so beautiful and so surreal. And the main thing that I felt when I was there was kind of like in awe of how big and towering the mountains were. I think because a lot of the cliffs, it was like sort of really flat and steep, so it felt like it was really towering over you. And the colour of the mountains is different to the Australian landscape. And obviously just the vegetation in general, the trees, the pine trees, like everything was just like, felt so familiar in terms of like Australian bush, but like so different all at the same time. So my first thought was like, how am I going to draw the pine trees? I think the trees are such a significant thing and visual identifier for the area, that something that I want to explore is like, how am I going to draw these trees in Jeff World style? I have a lot of photos of just like the environment itself, and I think I want to use those as starting points for like the framework for an illustration. So taking a photo and using where the rocks and the trees and the river and everything is as like a framework to create like a terrain, and then build up my world on it from there. I think that's a really nice starting point for maybe some landscape illustrations. The next thing was, because we were riding bikes. On the first day, we rode bikes all around the park and worked out sort of what we wanted to go back and see, and just sort of got the lay of the land. And I have a lot of footage and photos of us riding bikes, and I think this image of people riding through nature and appreciating nature could be some just really nice artwork. It also the times where we're like sitting and chilling in nature as well. I've done things in the past where it's like people sitting like surrounded by flowers and big bushes, but I haven't really done like smaller figures in like larger environments, if that makes sense. So I think that could be a really fun thing to play with. I could explore some animation stuff And I think these illustrations I do of landscapes, I could maybe collaborate with a friend, Alice, who is an animator, and we collaborate on a lot of projects together. Maybe I could give her the illustration and see if she can animate it and bring the world to life in some way, which would be really fun, really, really, really fun. So that's very high on my list of what I want to do once it's done. I could build a physical, like a 3D tree. So once I have an idea of what the pine trees look like, I could build like a cardboard 3D one and see where that sits in my world, especially with all my mini sprouts and other small sculpture objects. The panorama photos that I've taken, they obviously lend themselves to playing with perspective because it really warps perspective. And I think it could be fun to use those as the inspiration for any sort of big perspective drawings where it feels like the trees is kind of coming in on you. I guess it would be really quite surreal and could help me play with like dream-like scenarios in those landscape drawings. And again, I think I'm going to do a catalog of assets from Yosemite and sort of build up all the different sorts of flowers, trees, patterns, rock formations, how I draw the river, all that kind of stuff. And then use that to then go and create the artwork. So then everything kind of exists in this Yosemite world that I've created in like a Yosemite visual language. And the final thing for Yosemite is this bear trap, which I've never seen before, obviously, because we don't have bears. But I think it could be just a fun thing to draw. Okay, it's our second day, and we're doing the upper Yosemite Fall Trail. And it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
So it says that it's for like not advanced, but like accomplished.
Yeah, it's like meant to be. It's a hard one, and
Yeah.
you're meant to be quite like fit, and it's quite uphill. It's probably like it's like the hardest commonly done trail, I would say, in the park.
Yeah, they say it's all stairs, and apparently there's even a rail where there's just a rail on the edge and of like a wall, and the other side is open air. But so we're gonna show you how far we make it. It's 7.2 miles.
Yeah.
From memory, which we still haven't worked out what that converts to.
Like 15 kilometers.
Yeah, and I might be wrong, but I feel like it's like 1,000 elevation.
Yeah, it's like way
steep,
up.
real steep.
And like we're currently parked underneath the mountain that we're going to be climbing.
Yeah,
like
it's back there somewhere.
Peak, and it's like from this angle, it is perpendicular. Like it's like a 90-degree up sort of vibe. And so it should be really interesting.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. We need luck.
Wish us luck.
Wish us luck.
So we're here. Across over here, all these switchbacks going up super fast, and then we go all the way up, up.
Through the sign.
Through the sign, across the creek, way to here.
I think it's, around this area, Yosemite
that's a
Creek.
point,
Yeah.
yeah. So, wish us luck.
Wish us luck, and very strenuous.
We're about 15 minutes in.
Yeah, 15.
On the strenuous meter.
Mm-hmm.
About a 1 for now.
Not
That's
too
like
strenuous at all.
1.5.
1.
But we're still fresh, so. We made it to the top of the switchbacks. Just had a little drink. It's a little bit smoky today. We think it's smoke.
Yeah, the visibility is a lot different than yesterday.
Yeah, we're hoping it'll clear by the time we get to the top.
Yeah.
But like, it's just a drop.
Yeah, it's gonna get steeper and steeper, I reckon.
And the end of the switchback, I would say I got to a 2.
Do that another 6 times.
Yeah. I was in like just a few turnbacks. Righto, hero.
Like, if I had to.
Oh, totally, yeah. Mr. I can do 6 more switchbacks has
Ready
to
for
change his film,
it.
but he's getting really good at it now.
We did it.
First take.
Yep.
Oh my god, that's a first.
We are film photographers. Yeah. Cheers.
We don't know how far up we are.
Yeah. We're high.
We think we could be more than 2/3 of the way up. We think that up there behind Zane's head is where we have to climb through, like between the 2 mountains. And then we'll get to the top of the waterfall. We're just sitting in this nice little shady spot
There's a good breeze.
and looking down on the very smoky view, which is a little bit annoying that it's not clear, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. This is what we get, and it's still pretty.
Yeah, and on the strenuous meter, out of 10, we were on 6.
We were on 6, and that was, I think, there was a really full-on bit at the start.
Yeah.
It's kind of been a little bit easier since then.
Yeah.
I would say we're probably like, maybe it's maintained a 6.
Yeah, I'd say for me it's probably a bit more, but
Yeah.
it's not like it's hard. It's literally just endurance.
Yeah, it's like pushing through it. The other element of it is we're really close to the edge a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel like I'm going to poo my pants a little bit. It's very scary. But feeling the fear and doing it anyway.
All right, until the next check-in.
Yeah.
I'm not too red either.
No, you look good.
Right back at you. Just sweaty.
Yeah, my shirt is completely wet.
So we just had a lady tell us we're half a mile away, which is great. We think we're just up there. The moss trees are a new addition to the terrain, so we feel like we're in the new stage. And
There's people up there.
what's a remind you of?
Reminds me of Newey. We're here.
We made it.
We're at the top.
We just had some delicious lunch.
It was really good.
And I made Zane experience one of the most stressful things
No.
ever. I fell over and we were like walking down some stairs that were probably the most...
It was like the bit that I'd been kind of terrified of.
And wasn't going to go down.
Scared of.
And we weren't going to go down there. And I went, I'm just going to check. And I literally fell face down the stairs.
Down a couple of stairs.
And...
Yeah, it was terrifying. I was
oh my god.
very scared.
Ridiculous, stupid. And so now I have a bruise and a scrape And under here is like where like a rock like dug into my leg. So we have a first aid kit, obviously.
Clever.
So thank God we packed that. But it happened at like the worst spot ever.
Yeah.
Literally.
It was,
like at the very top.
yeah, heading down to the waterfall view area, which is like the thrill seeker zone.
So, yeah, that happened. So we just had some food.
Had some food.
We cleaned it out. We did some alcohol wipes. We bandaged it up. And so now we're just going to go down and probably go to their first aid and just make sure it's all good.
Yeah.
But we think we are like 2/3 of the way down the hill.
Yeah, we're on the home stretch now, I believe.
Thank God. My leg is fine for now, so thank God.
And it's more clear than it has been all day.
Yeah.
Kind of more beautiful.
So much more than the smoky that was this morning.
Yeah.
That's Half Dome over there.
Pretty much.
Take us home. Take us home. Strenuous?
Strenuous 10 out of 10.
What did it remind you of?
Nui? Reminded me of Nui.
Next is we went to Rainbow River, Rainbow Creek. I think it's called Rainbow, I should really look it up. Rainbow Pools. We went to Rainbow Pools. So on our third day at Yosemite, on our chill day, we went to Rainbow Pools, and it was just more of like a chill day to enjoy. And I did a bit of drawing in my sketchbook. And I think, again, this could just be a really nice bit of inspiration for creating a landscape, because the pool is surrounded by nature, and I took a lot of photos whilst I was there of the rocks and the bits of like vegetation and things like that. And I think it could just be an interesting sort of part of the map that I build up.
Here we go.
Reminds me of Nui.
Then on our final day, we went to Hetch Hetchy, and we did a walk around there on my birthday, which was pretty perfect. We didn't get as much water with the waterfalls because the snow had been melted for so long, but I think I'm okay with that. Like, I'd prefer to have it be not as busy. It's still really beautiful, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, Hetch Hetchy was really cool because it feels very similar to the Yosemite landscape, but it's just like a different terrain. Because it is a dam or like a reservoir where the walk goes around the water, it just felt really different but familiar. I really liked the signage for all the treks. That was another thing that Zane and I spoke about, was how that could be a source of inspiration for potentially some like text-based artworks. There was definitely some things that we would say along the whole holiday, little like inside jokes between us. And I was like, maybe we could turn those into text-based artworks that look like the signs. We'd always say, this reminds me of Nui, which is a quote from the Real Housewives of Melbourne. It's really hilarious. Maybe there's something there that we could use as inspiration from the signage, because they are signs that have had the text cut out of them, so it's negative space behind it. The grass at Hetch Hetchy was the other really like sort of recognizable thing that I connect to that area. And when we were doing the walk, we were talking about how I was thinking, how could I draw the grass? It's such like a simple thing, like golden grass, but like the way that I could draw it could vary quite a lot, whether there's like long thin like patterns lines, if it's more of a texture, if it's trying to do lots of detail. And I think that could be a really fun challenge to try and work out. Like the others, I could do a Hetch Hetchy pattern as well from all the different photos I took of the flowers and the plants, because there were different ones to being at the actual national park as well, or in like the main area. Once we finished up at Yosemite for the week, we then moved on to Monterey and we spent a few days there. And the main part from Monterey that I really loved was the aquarium. We knew it was a big, exciting thing you had to do, but when we got there, we were kind of mind blown by how beautiful all the spaces were and the way that it's not about pulling creatures from all over the world and putting them in an aquarium. It's just them showcasing the local environment and ecosystem and educating people on why it's important and how it's all connected, which I thought was really cool. I got a lot of footage and photos of just the animals themselves and like the algae and everything like that, because they were really quite interesting. There was one enclosure where you could do underwater and above water, so like with the otters and things. So I like the idea of maybe doing some drawings where it's like above and below water. Also looking at the different like enclosures as portals too, so looking into different spaces where these worlds are. There was also other beautiful scenery and shots from Monterey, but in general the aquarium I think was the main bit that I took away from it that could become inspiration for my work.
Reminds me of Newey.
And then one of the last things we did was do as much of the Big Sur drive, and then we went down to Santa Barbara for our second last night. Again, the windy paths and roads on the sides of the cliffs were really inspiring and felt very like otherworldly. I really loved the idea of sort of like going into all the different little pockets and what's the new environment and what's the new world from different viewpoints, because you're constantly pulling in and stopping and having a look at what's coming up and what's behind you, going on to the next section, doing the same thing. And so it just felt like these like mini pit stops, which was quite cool. In Santa Barbara, I loved just the low lighting and the dim lighting of the streets. It was not so much, I don't think there really was street light. So it felt really moody, a little bit romantic. The buildings were just like lit up in a different kind of way. I really loved it. And then we finished the trip by going back to LA and spending a few days back with Zane's brother and partner and doing a whole bunch of fun like West Hollywood things, which was really cool. But a lot of the inspiration I was kind of zonked basically by the end of the trip, and I didn't really take many more photos. As you can tell, there was a lot of inspiration that was pulled from the 2 weeks. And when I got back, once I went through all the photos, I then had to sit down and I guess put a plan of attack together on like how I'm going to approach it, because I did find it very overwhelming and I didn't really know where to start and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it all. But like I said, it's now been 2 weeks since I've been back and I've now got a bit of a plan of what I'm going to do, and so I'm just going to share it with you now. So it's a way to sort of like hold myself accountable, but also to like document it. Okay, so I have come up with 5 different types of artworks that I could create. I'm not entirely sure in what order I'm going to explore them all in, but this is what they are. So the first one is I'm going to do patterns from the different worlds or places / environments. So I'm going to do like a Yosemite pattern, repeat pattern. I'm going to do an aquarium repeat pattern, and I'm going to do an LA repeat pattern. And that is going to be a really nice example of how I could create patterns from different worlds in my head, I'm thinking it could be, you know, if I went on a holiday somewhere else, I could create patterns from all over the world. And I think that's a really cool concept for a series of illustrations. The next thing I'm going to do is do some world building artworks. So using photos of the different environments and use that as the framework to then create the world, and then have one that's based on the Hollywood sign walks and that world, one on Yosemite, and one from Big Sur. And then if I decide I want to sort of pull them together and make a map, I can do that if I want, but I'm not going to like promise that's going to happen. The third one is I'm going to do some text collaborations. So Zane and I were talking about, because Zane he did a lot of journaling when he was over there, and we thought it could be a fun way to collaborate is if we work on this idea of using the signs for all the treks as our design inspiration, and we have textures behind it of the grass and things like that, and we create text-based artworks on either his thoughts or like journal entries or things that we said whilst we're on holidays or saw. So like reminders of Nui. So that's a little series which I think will be really fun, and it means that Zane and I can work on it together, which would be, I would love that. The fourth one would be figures in nature and enjoying the environment. So things like riding our bikes down windy paths, walking through nature and sort of appreciating, looking at trees, and then also relaxing and like laying around in amongst all the nature too. The fifth and final one, which I'm kind of surprisingly really excited for, is doing my snapshot photograph kind of postcard illustrations. So the 3 different photos that I want to pull from are us standing and smiling in front of the Hollywood sign, just like having dinner at a restaurant, and then us smiling at our cabin with the bear sculptures around us. They're very holiday postcard photos, and I think it just could be really interesting to see like how I could turn them into an artwork where it's kind of like cropped in, played with like our figures, make it really fun. And yeah, just something completely different from everything else that I've had on the list. And that is my plan of attack for my artworks. It's a lot. It still feels quite overwhelming to look at and daunting. In a previous video, I have shared this plan or process that I use when I'm feeling overwhelmed with ideas and not knowing what to work on first. And it's called my Beck method, BECC. And so I'm going to use that method to just work out a bit of a plan of attack of what I want to make first. And I'm not going to give myself a time limit. If this is something that I work on for the next 3 years, so be it. I definitely want to try and do at least one of them in the next sort of like before the end of the year, just so I get a bit of like, I'm still excited about the trip. So I'm going to work on one of them at least, and I'll just go from there. I'm sure I will be doing more videos sharing the artworks once they're done or whilst I'm making them. I haven't really decided yet what that's going to look like, but yeah, I thought it would be a fun video to share with you. So I guess for me, it's like I wanted to document my holiday in some way and put it up for people to see what it was like if they wanted to see what it was like. But it's also here for me to look back on when I'm older as well. And I think the idea of like going on a holiday, trying to recharge and reset as a person is really important. But for me, I really find it hard to switch off. And whilst it sounds like I was just like constantly taking inspiration photos, it didn't really feel like that on the holiday. I really did switch off, and I found it, I think, really exciting to have all this new stimulus around me and be chatting every day with Zane about potential artwork ideas and what I find exciting and inspiring. And I think just not having to open my work emails or talk to clients or people was what I needed a break from, basically. So yeah, I'm really excited to make these artworks and see what they turn into. And hopefully you liked this video. Like I said, it was obviously different to what I've done ever on this channel. I've never really done a blog video like this. Might do more in the future, who knows? But until my next video, hope you enjoyed. You can find me on Instagram if you want to be friends there. Come say hello. I do a lot more behind the scenes and talk a lot more about the projects I'm working on, my client work. Yeah, lots more behind the scenes stuff there. So if you want to find me there, go for it. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.